Hello and welcome to Transform Today, a place where we can have a honest conversation. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. So let's get down to it. It's good to be here with you on this platform here in my office. And if you've been seeing any of these videos called Transform Today, this video series, you know I seem to be always starting with something about my life that leads into something else, or sharing a part of my experiences in the last little while. Whatever it is, I always start that way, and I think I'm going to keep doing that because I think in order for this to be a place where we can have that kind of conversation together, someone has to be a little bit vulnerable, and that would be me. So I just so look forward to maybe interacting with you. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube, and look forward to any comments that you might have. Anyways, I was going through some stuff at home and cleaning up some stuff. Lots of more time, I guess, these days to do that. But just found this ring right here. Probably, obviously, it's some sort of commemorative ring. This happens to be my high school graduation ring. One side it says here, on this side I'm looking at, it says 1978. On the other side it says we the class of 78, and that is my birthstone. Born in October. And I've been wearing it for the last couple of days, and as I've been wearing it, it's bringing back a lot of memories of my life growing up in Jasper, Alberta. That's where I was born. I was born in Jasper, Alberta, and was raised there by a mom and a dad, and had two sisters that were younger than me, and they're still around. And I was thinking of some of the things that happened over the years that I lived there, and then I was thinking of some of the influential persons in my life. And I must say that, without a shadow of doubt, the number one, for me anyways, the greatest influencer in my life was my mother. Today is June the 7th. Her birthday is June the 7th. If my mother was still alive, she would be 90 years old today. She was born June the 7th, 1930. My mother died on January 19th, 2009, and I miss her. I miss her, of course. She was a great influence, like I said, and it started to make me think about legacies. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into this, but I do want to share some things about my mother's legacy to me. My siblings would have to talk for themselves on this, but I just want to share some of those things. So what kind of legacy did my mother leave me? Well, there's kind of two. We'll start with the first one. The number one legacy that my mother left for me, and one that she modeled in her life, was her faith in God. And out of the faith of God comes the second thing that she left me, is her love for her family. Now, I realize that many people, and I've met people over the years, even in my work as a pastor and other work that I've done over my lifetime, folks that had terrible childhood experiences, tragic stuff, and it really, honestly, it just breaks my heart when I hear that stuff, because I had not perfect parents, but I had good parents, and I had a mother who left a great legacy to me, and one of those was her faith in God. Now, my mother was born in 1930, as I mentioned, in June 1930. So she was born in Italy. So she was basically about 9 years old when World War II started. And so she lived through the war years in the northern part of Italy, and survived the war. And then later on in life, she came over to Canada in the late 50s to marry my dad, and they got married, and then I was born, and then my two sisters. And my mother left behind a family of brothers and sisters aunts and uncles. And if you know anything about Italian culture, family is huge. It's huge. It's just amazing when you discover how much a family means to the Italian folks. Anyways, she came over and raised her family with Dad and her, and they raised us 3 kids. But again, going back to this faith in God, and I was thinking about this before, and I was getting quite emotional about it because, that's how big of an impact that she's had in my life. So her faith in God. And now, she always went to church. I'm not even going to mention the denomination or what church she went to, because that's not important right now. What's important is that she had a faith in God. I don't know when in her life. She never did tell me. She met God. And I mean she met God. And despite what we might think of people in different denominations, her faith was what kept her through all the years of her life up to her dying days. And it just totally amazed me. And my mother's the one that taught me how to pray the way she prayed. She taught me about trusting God and having faith in God. And my mother wasn't perfect. None of us are perfect. We need to admit that. And my mother told me that. She told me that she wasn't perfect. She was honest with me, and she told me I wasn't perfect. Of course, what kid is perfect, right? I know that I gave my mother and my family lots of trouble in my teenage years, and forever I'm ashamed of that. But it's interesting that my mother never held that against me. She just simply loved me. And I think the reason she was able to do that, despite even the heartaches she had over her lifetime, whether it's physical or relational, whatever it was because of her solid faith in God. And she went to church because she wanted to worship God. I remember one time my mom telling me, she was pretty upset. She didn't hold back a lot of things. If you knew my mother, she'd be honest with you. And she remembers going to church, and she was mad at some of the things that were happening in the church and at some of the people, the way they were acting and behaving. And she says, you know what? I go to church not for the priest, not for the people. She was just upset when she said that. But anyways, not for the priest, not for the people, but to worship God, to be with God, to pray to God, because that's where you go to do that. And my mother had an active prayer life. She prayed always before she went to bed. Like I said, she taught me how to pray. And I really believe that the legacy that she gave me was the ability to see faith in action. Just as a kid, just as an adult, even over the years. And I remember when my mother was on her deathbed in the hospital in Edmonton. And I'll be honest with you, I totally understand the situation we're in right now, and I really feel for those folks that weren't able to be with their loved ones when they died during this COVID-19 issue that we're going through right now. I just can't even imagine. And I remember in the last moments of my mother's life, just going up to her, going up to her head and up by her head and just saying, "Mom, I love you." And I asked her, "Do you know that Jesus is here with you?" And she couldn't speak at the time. She just nodded her head. And I believe that. I believe that with all my heart, that she absolutely knew where she was going, that her faith in God was solid right up to the very last breath she took. And, it was amazing to be able to be there. It was hard. And I'm thinking about it now, I'm getting a little bit emotional, and that should be the way when you love someone so much like that, and when they loved you that way too. And so she just went to be with her Lord, and that's just totally amazing. But what I had already alluded to, the love for her family wasn't perfect. Her life wasn't perfect. She wasn't a perfect person, but her love, I believe, with just everything that I understand about God, came from God, and it filtered in and through her life. And her her love for her family has left impressionable, even to this day, to her grandkids. And I know she's not here to see her all her great grandkids, but that's going to be passed on to them too, and it's just amazing. So I just want to kind of close this off. And by the way, thank you for listening to me in regards to talking about my family. And if you want to share stuff like that, please do so in the comment section. But I just want to share with you from the Bible how I really see my mother's love, all these years later. It's in a letter written by a fellow by the name of John, Apostle John. In his first letter, you find that in the Bible. If you don't have a Bible, if you're not a Christian, or if you're whatever, wherever you are in your life and you don't have a Bible, if you have a smartphone, you can find one really easy. Just get a Bible app. Go to the 1 John chapter 4, and we read, starting in verse 7, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world, that we might live through him. This is love, not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins." And further on down a little bit, down in that chapter, we read, "God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in him. In this way, love is made complete among us." And then further on down, another verse or so, "There's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. We love because he first loved us." And I really believe to this day that my mother loved me and my sisters and her family and others because her God loved her first, and she knew that. And it's just an amazing legacy for a mom to leave to her family. And well, thank you for being here with us, with me and my mom. Thank you for your time. I don't take it for granted. I hope you are well. And friends, if you want to know the love of God, you can. Just leave your comments, and I'll tell you how. Take care. Have a great day. And shalom.